Last night, before the president's diagnosis, he and Democratic candidate Joe Biden both spoke at a dinner in New York that raises millions of dollars for Catholic charities. At the virtual event, the president noted his efforts to help the faithful.
Our nation is strong because of Catholics and, frankly, people of all faiths. That is why, as president, one of my top priorities is to defend religious liberty and the cherished role of faith and faith-based organizations in our national life.
President Trump also said that he will not accept any attacks on the Catholic faith of Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett. Democratic candidate Joe Biden used his remarks to discuss how his faith has guided his public life.
And throughout my life in public service, I've been guided by the tenets of Catholic social doctrine that cuts across all confessional faiths. What you do to the least among us, you do unto me.
The former vice president also described how his Catholic faith helped him through several personal losses. Joining me now to take a closer look at last night's remarks is Edward Condon, D.C. bureau chief for Catholic News Agency and a canon lawyer. Ed, thanks for joining us. Always good to see you. So the speeches last night were definitely different in nature. Let's begin with President Trump. He used the opportunity to tout the administration's accomplishments and priorities, among them protecting the unborn. That pro-life record certainly resonates deeply with the faithful.
Well, that's right, Tracy. President Trump has definitely lent heavily on his pro-life credentials. He was, of course, the first sitting president to address the March for Life. And really, the abortion has taken, I think, a more prominent role in this presidential campaign than is being acknowledged, perhaps, by either of the two candidates, at least so far, or in their first debate together earlier this week. Nevertheless, it's a topmost issue for voters. Both sides really, I think, quite far apart on that, and it's really a black or white issue, both for the candidates and for many voters.
And Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden, he also gave a personal reflection of his Catholic faith and its importance. What stood out to you from his remarks?
Well, I think one of the things that stood out to me most during Vice President Biden's remarks was actually before he took the microphone. He was introduced, and the person who introduced him said that Al Smith, for whom this dinner is obviously named, the first Catholic to get nominated for president by one of the two parties, would have been proud to see Joe Biden become president. I don't know how true that is. I can't speak to Al Smith's ghost, as it were. But I think it raises a wider issue that both Vice President Biden and President Trump have areas of their policy and what they would like to see take place where they elected that are very far distant from Catholic teaching, whether it's on, for example, abortion or the death penalty. And I think this really, the entire Al Smith dinner, or not dinner, as it were, since it was a virtual event, points to the fact that there's a great deal of invocation of Catholicism and an appeal to Catholic voters on both campaigns here, but still a great distance by both candidates from actually the fullness of the Church's teaching.
Yeah, and one of the things that both of the men did was directly appeal to Catholic voters. We know from our EWTN News Real Clear Opinion research polling, which was conducted before the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that the frequency of Mass attendance correlates closely with which major candidate a Catholic supports. How significant do you think that will be as we get closer to the election?
Well, there's no question that the amount to one attends church definitely is a strong predictor of not only one's social values but also one's vote. And certainly regular Mass attendees seem to be skewing more in favor of the president. And I think that's something that's likely to hold. It's remained relatively steady over the president's first term. But of course, this has been a campaign of surprises. I think if anyone had been told only a few months ago that the Al Smith dinner would be taking place online, and certainly it was a humorless event compared to previous years, people would have struggled to understand that. So this has been a race of surprises, and I think we probably haven't seen the end of them yet.
Yeah, no doubt. And before we let you go, though, I do quickly want to get your take on the big news of the day, which, of course, is President Trump's COVID-19 diagnosis. Well wishes for him and the First Lady coming from leaders all over the world, as well as his Democratic rival, Joe Biden. Let's talk about that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a deeply tragic and deeply humanizing event whenever anyone falls ill, particularly with this pandemic that we've been in the midst of. And you know, how this will play out as a political issue is certainly not yet sure. But as you say, it's a moment when both from political opponents and from world leaders, the President and First Lady are on the receiving end of a number of well wishes, and certainly from all of us here, I'm sure, too. Of course, this is just the latest twist in a long running series of unexpected events. A Supreme Court vacancy, a surprising tone in a debate, and now, of course, this diagnosis for the president. The real unknown, of course, is the recovery time for the president and also those around him who've been diagnosed subsequently. I mean, you know, we've talked a lot in recent days about the Senate confirmation hearings into Judge Amy Coney Barrett. Remains to be seen how that confirmation schedule could be affected by members of the Judiciary Committee testing positive. So really, there are a lot of unknowns around here. This is a very unsettled race.
Absolutely. Well, Ed, we really do appreciate your time and you coming on and speaking with us today. Edward Condon, D.C. Bureau Chief for Catholic News Agency. Thanks again, Ed.
Always a pleasure, Tracy.